Right? Giovanna Miceli Jeffries is a professor emerita at Wisconsin-Madison University. She's the author of a few books and has published many academic articles. Only lately she published, actually not even a week ago, she published a memoir, which is the subject of our conversation. The book is called Bitter Trades. Welcome.
Thank you, Vito, for inviting.
It was nice that you accepted the invitation.
Thanks. No, it was
the audience ought to know that we actually met in graduate school.
Exactly.
We even participated at a literary magazine. Do you remember that?
The birth of a literary magazine, La Fusta.
La Fusta, right.
1975.
75, 76. So you finished school, and then what? You graduated, and what happened? You went to school? You went to teach?
After graduate school, yeah. I got both a master's degree and a PhD at Rutgers. And I moved, before I finished my dissertation and everything, we moved to Madison, Wisconsin, the University of Wisconsin. My husband had a position as a scientist. And
what does he do as a scientist?
Pardon?
As a scientist, what does he do?
Well, he's
a researcher?
Yeah, his field is microbiology, now is biotechnology mostly, yes. So we spent most of our life there. And I was pretty lucky because the University of Wisconsin-Madison as the largest department of Italian after Rutgers, imagine.
Really?
At our time, Rutgers was the largest, but the University of Wisconsin had the largest department, still has, you know, enormous number of enrollments. And I started teaching there in 1980. I did other teaching in other universities on several occasions, but mostly most of my...
So emerita means you basically retired.
I retired five years ago after teaching, but I was also involved in many other things, including with the local Italian community in promoting the teaching of Italian for adults and children.
As far as I know, you were also a feminist.
Yeah, I was. I discovered feminism actually pretty late. I was a late bloomer. I remember vividly. We lived around Columbia University, and I was auditing a class. And in that class, one of the readings was Una donna, a woman, by Sibilla Leramo, 1908, the first ever.
1908.
And it just kind of opened. I could not believe, really, that it was autobiographical. And I wanted to translate it at that time, I remember. And then we found out a few months after that it had already been retranslated by another author and published in England.
Now, I had expected in this book that I would see more of that feminist politics, yet I don't find it. It's basically a story of a girl, a family, all the traditional female things. And so I was a little surprised, in effect.
You were surprised.
Probably I thought you may want to talk more about that eventually with another memoir.
In fact, because the memoir and pretty much the narrative of the memoir ends in terms chronologically, I would say, though I go back and forth and I even jump to 1996, which is probably the last date I give, but basically the salient or the life, if you want to call, you know, forming experiences go up to 1975, in which I focus mostly. And the reason is because I really needed and I wanted to write the context for stories, whips, anecdotal that I have been telling.
It doesn't follow a linear story.
No, in fact, and I wanted to write.
So with that, you can go ad infinitum. We never stop.
Yes, I think I am consider myself lucky having a pretty good memory, and obviously...
Over 10 years ago, I met you again in Sicily.
Yes.
And, and I remember you wrote a book about recipes and memoir or something like that.
Yes, actually, I didn't write the book. I translated a kind of canonical novel, contemporary novel by Clara Sereni. In Italian is Casalingitudine, published in 1987. And I translated with Susan Briziarelli, was published in English. It was a beautiful edition and is, as I said, a pretty canonical book in Italian contemporary.
The books you have written, are they fiction or non-fiction?
Yeah, this book actually, though, is highly autobiographical. Clara Sereni is a prominent person, you know, as a story goes. But it is, in Italy, there is no such a thing as a memoir, meaning the genre is not catalogued. Anything that is narrative, whether it reflects your life or is a manipulation of your life, etc., is romanzo. So this is romanzo, Casalingitudine, and it is...
But yet you do dwell with the real and not fictitious characters and your family, and you say so that
this book is a memoir. We have this genre in English.
Now, I was associating memoir more with autobiography.
It is.
Is there a difference?
Not really. In a way, you draw from your autobiography, and you write in the I person. In a way, you draw from your life. Autobiographies, maybe you think about more historical. In memoir, you have, as memory says, you know, you can indulge in representing not just the fact per se, but how they affected you.
I see.
And this is what is important, you know. And you said, in terms of feminism.
And when did you start writing? Did you have a
this particular one?
No, writing in general.
Yes, Vito. I counted about a year or so ago. I was looking for a particular, you know, event, and I counted. I had already accumulated about 35 journals. I do remember distinctively when I started to write a journal. It was my first winter in Montreal in 1965. And it was...
We will talk about the immigration.
So I started, I've been writing. I have always written something narratively, you know, in terms of story. I also come from a tradition of storytelling. And
now you wrote this memoir, which is Bitter Trades. Of course, the title intrigues me. I say, why bitter, you know? Trades usually are exchanging either ideas or objects.
Right.
So it intrigued me immediately on that. But then the picture itself, I don't know if this is a painting or a design. What is that?
It's a silk screen.
Silk screen.
It's a silk screen that depicts a castle, a late medieval castle of the 14th century that is the oldest thing we have in my hometown in Ribera in Sicily. It was built in the, as I said, in the second part of the 14th century on the base of a fortress built by Muslim. In fact, still as an ancient Muslim name, because the Muslim, you know, the Arab were in Sicily. And then this was called the castle of Poggio Diana. Poggio means hill in Italian. Diana is from the name of the wife of this Spanish family, Moncada.
And so you basically, I will know in the story, you basically relate to this picture. In fact, in the book there's a picture. Why? What's the meaning? Can you explain a little more about the meaning of bitter and trades? What the trade here?
Right. The trades are because you know, almost anything that you do in life, when you have to make transition, whether you do it willingly or not, and especially in the case of emigration, of uprooting, then we always are aware of the American dream. Yes, we come here in whatever situation, etc., and something comes up, and luckily you make it, right? Some people big, some people more modestly, etc. So they're trades, and I am aware at this age and epoch of my life, and I can go. And I wrote this memoir to look always from different of my life.
I was giving it another meaning.
Really?
Yeah. And in fact, the person or the persona that writes a story or tells a story, in fact, is sort of mad that there was an exchange.
Unfair.
It was an unfair exchange of land on which this castle was. In fact, your family
that belonged to my family, my father.
Sold the land so that they could buy you a trousseau.
Exactly.
So maybe you want to tell us about that a little bit.
And as I said, this is a castle that belonged to my family. My great-grandfather bought it in 1921. No, of the castle, actually, that was an encumbrance. The land, of course, was pastoral, almonds and olives, etc. My father, by order and inheritance from his mom, inherited the top with the structure, and he didn't actually
So what happened when you got married?
Well, what happened is that we had this land, and when I was engaged to my husband, we were in the States. Of course, you are in a traditional setting, even though you are in the States, 2 years actually, and my mom insisted that I didn't have a trousseau. She said, I'm not gonna let you go marry naked. She used the word.
Now, what is a trousseau specifically?
A trousseau is it's almost like a dowry that is not land or houses, but it is all you need: a set of linen, a set of tablecloth in numbers like 7 of them, 8 of this, etc. So they're valuable, and my mother, for instance, up to my mother, she embroidered them. I didn't, and she didn't have anything for me. My grandmother had already prepared, so she said, I'm going to go back to Sicily before you get married and prepare a trousseau. So she bought, and she had family met too, a conspicuous one, but obviously when they are there, they were expensive, and we have been here only a couple of years when we moved. So my father decided to sell his property, including the castle, which didn't interest him minimally. But the castle was important to me, not because I thought it belonged to us. I always thought it was too important as a structure, belonged to the city.
And it became the symbol of the town.
It is, actually, has always been the symbol of my town. Is in every single piece of paper that you find, municipal emblem, it's the coat of arms, everything. But to me, it's important because I have stories about this castle. I have, attachment, and because
Anyway, you were born in Sicily.
I was born and raised and schooled in Sicily, educated till I finished my,
and you came
I
here
got a
as
diploma,
an adult.
yeah, and then we moved.
You talk about here immigration, obviously, and it began with your father.
Yeah, in Venezuela.
He went to Venezuela.
Yeah.
I must tell you that he and I traveled the same year to Venezuela.
1953.
Different transatlantic or ocean liner.
Wow. Really?
But it was 1953. Obviously, he was an adult. I was a child. I was not even 14 yet, 13 and a half, and I traveled alone. But I got out of Venezuela, even though I liked it a lot. From the story I read in your book, it was sort of negative. But I went through the revolution of
Cuba?
No, the Venezuelan. There was a revolution
right.
before it was in Cuba. I liked the country. I thought it was a rich country, very rich, and I had very good impression. But I got out because of all the reason, family reason, but not because of the country. Your parents actually, because eventually
my mother goes
your mother.
For briefly.
Yeah.
But my father loved Venezuela too, Vito, and had not been for his family, I don't think he would have come back.
I see.
And this is it, but to us, living as children with a father for 10 years.
You resented when your father came back.
I just didn't know this man, sort of speaking, and imbalance our family dynamic. I grew up with my mom. I was already an adolescent, it was a presence, a masculine.
So you came to the U.S. Immediately after your father returned from Venezuela?
About 2 years after my father came back from Venezuela, we moved first to Canada, to Montreal, where we had an uncle. And after 7 years there, then we moved to the U.S. My sister had married an Italian-American. My father didn't want to be. My mom separated, and it was the easy thing for them, but it was like uprooting me again, because I had to follow the family, obviously.
So you, in a way, don't say much about Canada until you reach to the U.S. And then you can compare the U.S. with Canada. Your reaction or impression of the U.S. wasn't so positive, because apparently you ended up in Elizabeth, New York, where...
Actually, in Jersey City.
New Jersey, Elizabeth, New Jersey.
New Jersey, yeah.
Which at that time must have been a very dangerous place.
It was just, you know, really urban decay, lots of... I didn't see the manifestation. I just saw a urban decay, which was fearful. I was very clustered, protected, and I saw all the ugliness, you know, and fear too, because, you know, I noticed that it was not as safe as in Montreal. Montreal was a modern city. It was a
But I imagine the impression that you had initially has changed now, because you remained there.
Yeah, obviously, completely. I've moved, I've been in this country more than twice of my,
life, yeah.
More than 40 years. I have visited many parts of the countries, and I have become, you know, I am a citizen, just as I am an Italian citizen still. But at that point in 1972, when I started Rutgers, it was not really a good encounter.
Tell us a little about your great-grandfather.
Yeah.
I think he's quite a character.
Yes, the first story, and I call them story, each one has a title. First story is called For a Handful of Chickpeas. Handful of chickpeas. And it's a memorable expression that I always heard since I was probably 6 or 7, anecdotically. And through this expression, and other expression too, I learned the basics about, you know, what people are, what they do, and why they are respected, or why they are so highly considered. And I had the privilege of
your grandfather, your great-grandfather was highly, they call man of honor.
He was a man of honor.
But man of honor...
In the old-fashioned.
In the old-fashioned.
Meaning a man highly respected and feared, but a man who just...
But for example, when I read it, it implied other things. For example...
Pardon?
It implied other things to me. What I know about the man of honor in Sicily means mafia, organized crime. And in fact, you even said that your great-grandfather was in jail for a couple of times.
2 times.
2 times.
The first time when I was very young, the second time during fascism. He was in the island of Tremiti, where also anti-fascists were interned. So very likely must have seen Sandro Pertini, the former president, because he was interned there too.
So for political reasons.
The island of Tremiti. And he learned to write and read there through the other sort of exile people. Yeah. He was a person of integrity, and he had been accused falsely as a young man of an homicide that he saw. And then, as it happened in the society, we're talking about the very beginning of the 1900s, when
his name was Nicola.
Nicola. But in Sicilian, we say Nicola.
Oh, Nicola. You put an accent, and I thought maybe something was strange, because Nicola...
No, it is Nicola in Italian, but in this particular story, I use both my great-grandmother and my great-grandfather name the way we say in Sicilian, Francesca for my great-grandmother.
Francesca. Yes, but Francesca also implies to me that it could be some Spanish background.
Well, the Spanish occupation in Sicily lasted 300 years.
So then, maybe just a linguistic that was...
Oh yeah, there are many, many, many Italian words. But anyway, as I said, you know, the first story sets the tone in terms like, you know, what this memoir is about. It's about, for me, to reprocess and revisit everything that, you know, was formative, was life-defining, and especially the past that came from my growing up was important because they were definitely conditioning
We are
factors.
not going to talk about all that is in the book because it would be too many hours.
Yeah, too many.
One thing that impressed me a lot, and I even learned, and I wanted to know why you dwell so much on this subject, and probably has to do with feminism. I was thinking in the beginning that you dwell so much about the mystery or the life cycles of women. I never read anything before this book.
Really?
Yeah, really, to me, for example, menstruation was a mystery from the very beginning, and even today, you know, I know what it is. I know maybe
physiologically
but instead with your book, you go so much into it. Even as you, as a child, discovered the cycles and the pains and the embarrassments of that, and I thought that was very precious. Was this because you are feminist? Obviously, you wanted to expose these things, or because of some kind of educational reason you wanted to? Because people don't talk about these things.
No, in fact, you know, this is called, in fact, you know, I am glad you're raising that, because in previous interview I said nobody had ever asked about this. And I'm glad you did, because, you know, it's different from the other. This is with others in that particular part of the book is about the strangeness. What makes an experience, a determining feminine woman experience so particular, so traumatic in my case. And it is because of the way it was transmitted, because it was completely ignored in terms of elucidating or telling you. It was just basically treated as, okay, do this, and nobody talks about that anymore, etc. You have to learn secondary, superstitious things.
You as a girl discovered these things that in the beginning you didn't know. You were a tomboy, and all of a sudden you find yourself...
And I resented because it didn't allow me to be as free as I wanted. I just thought it was a torture, a cross.
And that it was a natural...
Exactly.
I could give you some example of my own daughters when they discovered...
And of course, having had my own daughters, then I realized really what changed, how things are, really, what it should be.
Another strange idea or subject is that you resented, at one time your father came back from Venezuela, your mother got pregnant.
Exactly.
And the whole family spoke ill about it.
Exactly.
And even yourself, you resented that, and eventually your mother had to have resort to abortion. Yeah. Now, that is antithetical to feminism in a sense, or is it pro?
No, actually, it is not. It is
the woman has the right to decide.
Exactly. No, it is not. And it was highly practiced, and it was not absolutely...
But it was not recognized.
No, it was a... You know, women died. Even my mother could have died. You know, she had an infection, inflammation. So my father coming, in a way, upsetted the balance that we had in the family, in that reason. And when you are conditioned by the people around you, a mother with teenager's daughter who is pregnant, my grandmother was just, you know, out of herself. You know, and my mother was... Obviously.
Another thing I believe it's important in the book is that your relatives were saying that a home without a man has no name, or has no name. Isn't that a patriarchal kind of heavy, right?
You know, imagine what it does to a child like me when my father was in Venezuela and my mother lived like a white widow. There was no social life except church and family. And then the justification from everybody else was, well, a home without a man doesn't have a name, meaning you have to be careful, you have to be extra watchful, etc. You can't expose yourself, because what does it mean we don't have a name? Well, we're bastard. What does it mean? So the sense of precariousness of this home without a man, without my father in the house, So you feel it since you grew up.
At the risk of being misunderstood, maybe I should not even
mention.
In a sense, I'm not saying that a family or a home without a man is not it has no name, but I do believe, and this probably could go on a discussion for hours, is that a home, I believe, and this may be patriarchal, whatever, but I think is, after so many years of experience, a home without a man can hardly be called a family. And so that is, I would disagree with you on the sense that, you can talk about feminism, but there are some realities that we must face, just as you have been facing throughout the book. There are a couple of more things that I want to go before we end, because the program is just about over. In one area, you said that you had a casa colonica. I never knew.
Grandparents.
Their own grandparents. I never knew that the fascists, fascism in Italy, provided these kind of houses so that people could get out of town, of cities.
Live there to incentivize agriculture, because you see, in Sicily, it was like any other occupation. Peasant, farmers will take their mules and horses, go to the fields, spend the day, and come home, and then wash and eat and go to town. So it was urban living in a way. But Mussolini wanted to intensify agriculture. So if you stay there, you work longer, you attach yourself more. So those case coloniche were very attractive. I thought they were like
I never heard them before.
You never heard about that,
First time.
So we will go.
I was amazed.
And not everybody, people didn't live there. They just stayed there. They were lovely. They were nicely made.
One more news that I had reading your book is that in Sicily you had cotton. I only associate cotton with the U.S., south of the U.S., and all of a sudden I hear cotton, and I say, she must have made a mistake.
No, at all. Almond, cotton, olives, name it, fruit of all forms.
I know the olives, I know the oranges.
Cotton in the fall. We had cotton.
You picked up the cotton yourself, and the...
Oh, it was lovely. One of the nicest things against, unlikely, the almonds, just pulling cotton. Always associated with the season of the year.
The last question I have before the end is that, do you have any idea of another book? Is there another book in the works?
Yes. First of all, I am writing this one in Italian. I have already gone through, probably.
Why don't you have somebody write it in Italian for you as a translation?
No, I am rewriting in Italian, meaning...
You change...
Well, there are, expansion, etc. Certain things that, you can see in Italian.
I want you to, instead, to continue. In this book, you stop from college, from graduate school.
Right.
And I'm sure you have had all that experience as a feminist. Why don't you...
At that point, when I started to write that, I felt like, as I said, what to me constituted, this trauma or this element that they conditioned my life, that they made me who I am in a way, were there. And I wanted to write them and feel with the voice of a child, with the voice of an adult, with the voice of a teenager. So in the future, I hope that I will go more with a critical eye about the remaining.
We have reached the end.
We have.
We invite you to come next week or next month when we have another Italian-American writer. Thank you.
Good.